Have you ever wondered why so many retirees focus only on the size of their Social Security check, while almost no one pays attention to the economic forces that determine how much that check is actually worth? This is one of the biggest mistakes millions of Americans over the age of 60 are making today. Every year people wait for the announcement of the cost of living adjustment, or COLA, believing that a larger percentage automatically means greater financial security. But history tells a very different story. A higher COLA may sound like good news, yet it can also be a warning that inflation has already taken away much of your purchasing power before the increase even arrives. That is why the conversation about the 2027 COLA is much bigger than most headlines suggest. It is not just about a percentage. It is about whether your retirement income can continue supporting the lifestyle you spent decades building. Today, I want to explain why this matters, what many retirees are overlooking, and how understanding the bigger economic picture can help you make better financial decisions in an uncertain world. When people hear discussions about inflation, government debt, interest rates, or the Federal Reserve, many assume these topics only matter to Wall Street investors. In reality, retirees are often the first group to feel the consequences of these changes. Unlike younger workers, who may receive promotions, overtime pay, or salary increases, retirees usually depend on fixed sources of income. That means even a modest rise in the cost of groceries, housing, utilities, insurance, or healthcare can quietly reduce purchasing power month after month. The danger is that this process rarely happens overnight. Instead, it slowly erodes financial security until many people suddenly realize that the same monthly income no longer covers the same monthly expenses. By then, adjusting becomes much more difficult. One of the reasons this issue deserves attention is because inflation does not affect everyone equally. Government calculations are based on broad averages across the economy, but every retiree has different spending habits. Someone dealing with rising prescription drug costs or higher medical insurance premiums may experience inflation very differently from someone who spends more on travel or entertainment. That means even if the official COLA adjustment appears reasonable, your personal cost of living may increase at a much faster pace. This gap between official inflation measurements and personal expenses is something many households underestimate until they begin reviewing their monthly budgets. Another factor that deserves attention is America's long-term fiscal picture. Over many years, government spending has increased while national debt has continued to grow. Economists hold different opinions about exactly how this will affect future generations, but there is broad agreement that debt, interest costs, inflation, and economic growth are deeply connected. When governments borrow more money, policy decisions become increasingly complex. Central banks may face difficult choices between supporting economic growth and controlling inflation. Those choices eventually influence interest rates, savings, investments, borrowing costs, and ultimately the purchasing power of retirement income. This is why understanding the broader economic environment matters even if your primary income comes from Social Security. Many retirees believe that once they stop working, their financial planning is complete. In reality, retirement may require even more careful planning than the years leading up to it. During retirement, every financial decision has a longer-lasting impact because income sources are often more limited. Unexpected inflation, market volatility, healthcare expenses, or changes in tax policy can all affect long-term financial stability. The most successful retirees are usually not those who predict every economic event perfectly, but those who remain flexible, informed, and prepared for different possibilities, rather than assuming today's conditions will continue forever. This brings us back to the growing attention surrounding the 2027 COLA discussion. Instead of asking only one question, how much will my Social Security payment increase? A more important question might be, will that increase actually protect my purchasing power? Those are two very different questions. If everyday expenses continue rising faster than expected, even a noticeable adjustment could leave many households feeling financially squeezed. Understanding this difference is essential because retirement security depends not only on income, but also on how much that income can actually buy in the real economy. As we continue, we'll look more closely at the economic trends shaping retirement, why inflation can remain stubborn even after headlines suggest it has cooled, and the practical steps retirees can take to strengthen their financial resilience without making emotional decisions or reacting to every market headline. Understanding inflation requires looking beyond the monthly headlines. News reports often celebrate when inflation begins to slow, but slowing inflation does not mean prices return to where they were before. It simply means prices are increasing at a slower pace. Imagine your grocery bill rises from $150 to $165 one year, and then to $173 the next year. Inflation has slowed, yet you are still paying more than before. For retirees living on fixed income, this distinction is extremely important because every increase becomes part of the new normal. The challenge is not only dealing with today's prices but preparing for tomorrow's. Healthcare is another area that deserves close attention. As Americans grow older, medical expenses often become one of the largest parts of the household budget. Insurance premiums, prescription medications, specialist visits, and long-term care can all become more expensive over time. Even when Medicare helps cover many costs, retirees frequently face out-of-pocket expenses that continue to rise. If these costs increase faster than retirement income, financial pressure builds quietly year after year. This is one reason many financial experts encourage retirees to regularly review their spending plans. Instead of assuming last year's budget will still work next year, housing expenses also continue changing after retirement. Some homeowners believe paying off a mortgage completely eliminates housing costs. In reality, property taxes, homeowners insurance, maintenance, repairs, and utility bills often continue increasing, regardless of whether the house is fully paid for. Renters face another challenge, as rental prices in many communities continue adjusting with local market conditions. These ongoing expenses remind us that retirement planning does not stop once someone leaves the workforce. It becomes an ongoing process of adapting to changing economic conditions. Another mistake many retirees make is keeping too much attention on short-term headlines. Financial markets react every day to political events, economic reports, and global news. Watching every headline can create unnecessary anxiety and sometimes leads people to make emotional financial decisions. History has shown that markets experience periods of uncertainty, recovery, and growth over long periods of time. While nobody can predict exactly what will happen next, making major financial decisions based only on fear or excitement has rarely produced the best long-term results. Diversification has always been one of the most important ideas in investing. Rather than relying on a single source of income or one type of investment, many financial professionals recommend building a balanced approach based on personal goals, risk tolerance, and time horizon. Every retiree's situation is different, so there is no universal strategy that works for everyone. The important lesson, understanding that protecting purchasing power often requires thoughtful planning instead of assuming one income source alone will solve every financial challenge. It is also worth remembering that retirement is no longer the same as it was decades ago. Americans are living longer than previous generations, which is positive in many ways. But it also means retirement savings may need to last 20 or even 30 years. During such a long period, the economy can experience multiple business cycles, changes in inflation, different interest rate environments, and unexpected global events. A retirement plan that works well today should also be flexible enough to adjust if economic conditions change in the future. Government policy also plays an important role. Decisions involving taxes, Social Security, Medicare, and federal spending can influence retirement finances over many years. While no one can predict future policy changes with certainty, staying informed allows retirees to better understand how new legislation could affect their personal financial situation. Reading reliable information, reviewing official announcements, and consulting qualified financial professionals when necessary can help reduce confusion during periods of economic uncertainty. Perhaps the biggest lesson is that financial security is about much more than the size of a monthly check. Real security comes from understanding expenses, protecting purchasing power, maintaining flexibility, and making informed decisions instead of reacting emotionally. The 2027 COLA discussion, important because it reminds us that retirement planning is connected to the larger economy. Inflation, interest rates, government debt, productivity, and economic growth all influence the value of retirement income over time. As investors, savers, and retirees, we cannot control every economic event. We cannot decide what inflation will be next year or what policies lawmakers will choose. But we can control how prepared we are. We can review our budgets, understand our spending, build emergency reserves where possible, avoid unnecessary financial risks, and continue learning about the forces shaping the economy. Those habits often matter far more than trying to predict the exact percentage of next year's COLA adjustment. The future will always contain uncertainty, yet uncertainty does not have to become fear. Throughout history, every generation has faced economic challenges, periods of inflation, recessions, market corrections, and policy changes. Those who remained informed, patient, and disciplined were generally better positioned to navigate those challenges than those who relied on headlines alone. The goal is not to panic about the future but to prepare thoughtfully for it.